I chose Dorothy Irene Height as a person of color in the history of U.S. social welfare because I have heard of her name in many different classes, but I did not know the great amount of contributions and accomplishments she has made in our country. Dorothy Height spent her life fighting for civil rights and women's rights. She was widely respected and she was an influential leader of organizations that focused primarily on improving the circumstances and opportunities for African American women. Dorothy Irene Height was born in Richmond, Virginia on March 24, 1912. Around age 4, her family picked up and moved to Rankin, Pennsylvania, where her father worked as a building contractor and her mother was employed as a private nurse. During Height's high school years, she became extremely socially and politically active in her school. She also participated in anti-lynching campaigns during her high school years. She earned a $1,000 scholarship for college by winning a national oratory competition. After graduating high school, she then attended New York University studying in the social work program. She earned 2 degrees, a bachelor's degree in education in 1930 and a master's degree in educational psychology in 1932. She did also do postgraduate work at Columbia University. Dorothy Height had a huge role of the African Americans and the society as a whole because she was huge in the civil rights movement, which was making equal rights in legislation for African Americans not to be segregated. After graduating college with her 2 degrees, Height worked for a period of time as a social worker. Then in 1937, one of her greatest contributions was joining the staff of YWCA, the Young Women's Christian Association. This association was aimed to advance the physical, social, moral, and intellectual interests of young women. One of her major contributions during her time with YWCA was her directing the integration of all of its centers in 1946. She established its Center for Racial Justice in 1965, which ran until 1977. This then led Dorothy Height to her advocacy of improved conditions for Black domestic workers, to her election to national office within YWCA, and to her involvement with that organization's integration policy. She then became the president of the National Council of Negro Women. This is a nonprofit organization that has a mission to advance the opportunities and the quality of life that African Americans and their families have. She stepped down from being president of this organization in the late 1990s, but stayed in it until her death. These accomplishments led Height to being one of the leading figures of the civil rights movement. She was able to work with Martin Luther King Jr. and a few others, and then stood by Martin Luther King Jr. as he gave the I Have a Dream speech. Height then joined in the fight for women's rights. In 1971, she decided to help found the National Women's Political Caucus. This was an organization that was dedicated to recruiting, training, and supporting women who seek elected and appointed offices at all levels of the government. Another task that Height took on during this time was the focus on strengthening African American families. During 1986, she organized the first Black family reunion, and we now know today that these are still extremely popular events and are still held between African American families. Height then used her position to call on the Black community to make itself more independent, placing special emphasis in the 1990s on drawing young people into the organization to join in war against drugs, illiteracy, and unemployment. This led Height to serve as a social services expert on local, state, and federal governmental groups that dealt with the concerns on women's issues. She helped to secure funding for a national headquarters for the NCNW in Washington, D.C. In 1994, Bill Clinton awarded Height with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He gave this award to her because she is one of the world's most tireless and most accomplished advocates of civil rights and the rights of women. She was also awarded this because her powerful voice for equal opportunity for all. In 2004, President George W. Bush gave her the Congressional Gold Medal, and then President Barack Obama named her the godmother of the civil rights movement because of all the accomplishments that she had made. On September 7, 2004, Height was inducted into the Democracy Hall of Fame International on the Capitol Hill campus of the National Graduate University in Washington, D.C. She received an award in 2009, which was the National Association of Social Workers Lifetime Achievement. This was well deserved for Height to get awarded because of the tireless advocate that she was. She was a leader in many different ways. Sadly, Dorothy Irene Height passed away in Washington, D.C. on April 20th, 2010. We have recognized the great amount of contributions and work that she put in for our country. She deserves to be recognized and learned about much more than she is today.